Hello again, Greg Deuble here, speaking to you about really important matters that concern our faith and our practice as we come to look at the Bible's testimony about who God is, about who Jesus is, and some of the ramifications that flow from that. This morning I'd just like to speak to those of you who are wanting to engage in a non-threatening way some of your family or some of your church members or some of your friends when they may hear little rumours that you perhaps are not quite believing what they are about the God of the Bible, who is a so-called Holy Trinity, a 3 in 1 and a 1 in 3. One of the things that I personally find helpful when people sort of confront me and say, well, do you believe in the Trinity, or don't you believe in the Trinity, or why don't you believe in the Trinity, so-called? One of the things I personally like to do, which sometimes can disarm them instantly without being aggressive, without being over-threatening, is this: to ask them this question: do I believe in the Trinity? Well, let me first ask you, if I may, which Trinity are we talking about? Because as you would be aware, there are a number of different doctrines about the Trinity, and even Trinitarians amongst themselves label the various competing doctrines of the Trinity as unorthodox, read between the lines as heretical. Now, of course, just to give you a brief sort of rundown on the different Trinities without going into any major depth or any thoroughness about it, but just to give you an overview, one of the Trinities early on in the Church's history, which was pronounced by the majority Trinitarian group as unorthodox, as heterodox, that is, as heretical, was the doctrine that called modalism, where there is one God, but he can manifest himself or express himself in 3 different modes. On this occasion, he may want to be the Father and express himself that way. On another occasion, he will express himself as that one God in the person, or another expression, I should say, another form called God the Son. And then thirdly, on other occasions, this one God may want to express himself in the manifestation as the Holy Spirit. And so you have this doctrine of the Trinity called modalism, where one is really an expression of 3 different modes. Then there's another type of Trinitarianism, which is called the social Trinitarian position, which would be today, it would be fair to say, the majority position, where the Trinity is really 3 distinct persons, 3 individual persons, but they are one in the sense that they are in one essence, one in nature. When, for example, Jesus says in John 10, I and my Father are one, they say that this proves that Jesus is claiming to be one in the essence of God. So we have this second type of Trinitarianism, as generally called the social Trinity, where God forever has existed as 3 persons, but he is one in the sense of being in one nature and one essence. You have other different strands of Trinitarianism, where you have what's called the economic Trinity. I don't want to go too much into that because today it's not so much a cherished ideal. There is another type of Trinitarianism from the Mormons. They have another different type. Again, I won't go into that because it's clearly not a mainstream belief, but to them, their teaching of the Trinity is rather confused and convoluted, but it's another take on the doctrine of the Trinity. So there are these various types of Trinities out there, plural Trinities. So when someone says, do I believe in the Trinity, I find it a helpful way to say to them, well, which Trinity do you believe in? And that often disarms them in a non-threatening way, and they can then have an opportunity to say, well, this is what I believe about God, and then we have a basis on which to move forward. So it's just a little helpful tool, a little thing that I often do, that often, even from pastors who don't consider that there's any other type of Trinity than the one that they themselves dearly hold. And it oftentimes brings them to a point where they say, well, I'm not really sure which one I believe in, and that gives us a basis to introduce them. Well, this is a very confusing thing. You're supposed to believe it for your everlasting good and salvation, but if you can't define which Trinity you believe in, perhaps you may not have the right Trinity, therefore you may be in eternal peril of losing your good soul. So this is a critical point before any discussion can continue on the basis of belief as being essential to salvation.